Okay. Hey, Robert, can you hear me? Oh no, is my mic not working? Testing, testing, voice test, one, two, three. Okay, I think you guys can probably hear me. All right, so let's
I can
share
hear
the.
you.
Oh, good, good, good. Thank you, Ella. All right. Ella, tell me about yourself, please. Oh no, what happened to Ella? Hi, Josh Wallace.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm doing well. There we go.
All right. Oh, that's fancy, Josh Wallace. Um, let me see. Let me stop. I want to see your screen, Josh Wallace. Oh, peer. Lots of peer stuff.
These are all
Peer,
things that I've started under the umbrella of Pure Washington.
beautiful. So, Josh, we're live streaming. Okay.
Okay.
So no F bombs, all right?
Oops. Okay, I'll try really hard not
Just,
to.
yeah. I mean, seriously, might affect my monetization. No, I'm just kidding. I don't make any money from this. Okay. But we're going to wait about 5 minutes and then I'll introduce you.
And is there anything specific you'd like me to talk about?
Yes, tell us your personal recovery story and then build up about how you became like a peer specialist in your professional life.
Okay.
Sounds
Easy enough.
simple?
How much
Okay.
time? How much time are you gonna give me?
I can give you up to 20 minutes
Okay.
or maybe a half hour, whatever you like. 20 to a half hour.
It's always good to know ahead of time so I don't overdo it.
Are you a very verbose guy?
I am, especially about things I'm passionate about, and this is definitely my greatest passion.
Oh, okay. Now let me see. Now there's a weird thing happening. Do you guys see Ella? Or do you see what I see? It's like just a bar for in a dark box. Or do you guys see the name Ella? No? With one of the guests. Hi, Refried Bean.
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
Okay, nice to see y'all.
Nice to see. It's really nice to see you, Refried Bean.
Yeah, I wanted to
Refried.
come last week and I couldn't find the link.
Oh man, it's always on the website. You can always go to the website and find it.
Okay, whenever I click on that, I'm the only person in the room. And I'm like, I think it's the wrong link. That's how I feel.
Oh,
But
maybe you're
I
clicking
found this in my
spirit.
spam folder.
Oh, okay, good. We're in spam. That's excellent. All right. And you know, spam is actually quite healthy, so if you think about it. All right. So let me see. Ella. Oh, Ella's gone. Yeah, she was having some technical difficulties. Refried, will you ever come to a PIP? Do you know what a PIP is,
Maybe, is
Refried?
that the thing on Saturdays?
Sundays,
Is that
Sundays.
an in-person thing here in person?
Yeah, peers
Here's
in
in person.
person, PIPs. That's what we call it, Josh. PIPs. We do
Oh,
I'll come to that sometime.
do you get wind of it? Do you hear about it? Do you understand when it's happening?
I've heard of it before, but I never thought about coming, but I'll try to.
Do you get the invites, Refried?
I saw it in the spam box.
Uh, get me out of spam, please. Please get me out of spam.
Okay.
You know how to get me out of spam, right, Refried?
No, but I can just check my spam folder,
Well,
you
no,
know?
you could actually like give Google or whatever it is the okay that I'm not spam. You
Oh, okay.
open up the email and then there should be like a box where it says not spam or something.
Okay, I'll try that. I'll try.
Okay. So who else? So we now, is that Ella?
Yeah,
Ella, you,
I'm actually here. I'm also helping my mom, so I couldn't what was I say? As I say, I actually used to live in Washington State in Olympia.
Ah,
But I'm from New York.
are you
But
in New York right now, Ella?
yeah, I'm from New York, but and I'm in New York.
Are you living
I
in New
was
York
in
City?
Yeah, I'm in New York City. I was in Olympia, Washington for like almost 10 years. Um I used to work at a shelter there, and like definitely a lot of people are getting their peer certificates there, which is cool. Yeah.
yeah, we
I think
passed
it's probably come a long
licensure
way.
here.
Hmm?
We passed licensure here under Title 18 that goes into effect July 1. We're writing the curriculum right now, so peers will actually be able to hang their own hat.
Excellent. Yeah.
And you'll get into that, right?
I can. Don't forget.
Do you think it's appropriate?
Well, I think it's hugely important, but here's where we get into my passions because there's so many things that I think are important to talk about for all
All
of us
right.
across the nation, and we're not. So,
Well, don't worry, Joshua. You be the judge and the jury, I guess. Um, oh, good. Some people are coming in. All right, so we have 2 more minutes, Josh. Okay. Hello, Stan. I'm gonna make you the co-host, Stan. Stan is our co-host, you guys. Let me see. I don't see. Where is Stan? Stan. Oh, there you are. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. All right, Stan, your co-host. And then we have James Litgett from NYC, I believe in Harlem, right, James?
Upper West Side.
Upper West Side, not quite Harlem then. So right below
Yeah.
Harlem, right below. All right, all right. So let's see. So Ella, we do with this is like a City Voices program, this Peer Workers United group tonight, and we do other programs. We have monthly events called PIPs, and it happens in New York City. We just finished one yesterday where we were helping to clean up Prospect Park with a big group of people. It was a lot of fun and good exercise. If you're interested, we do museums, we do parks, we do all kinds of things. If you're interested, please put your email in the chat, okay, Ella?
Cool. Okay.
We'd love to see you in person. All right. Okay, I'm going to start introducing Josh. Welcome to a very special Peer Workers United support group for peer support workers, for peer specialists. These are people who provide peer support. They have the lived experience of mental health and addiction challenges, and they provide a special kind of lived experience support to their peers, to people who are, having challenges and who also have these the same challenges. So today we have a special guest, Joshua. Let's see, it's Joshua Wallace. He goes by Josh, I think, and he's from Washington State. He's a peer specialist, and he was nominated by his colleagues to be a hero of peer support for our Heroes in Peer Support series. So without further ado, I pass it on to Joshua Wallace. Go ahead, Josh.
thank you, Dan. So my name is Joshua Wallace, and I think first and foremost, I identify as a person who's thriving in long-term recovery from both mental health and addiction issues. I think it's always important to begin with that because I do think it's thriving is what we do in spite of what we're told. Growing up, my childhood was filled with physical, mental, and sexual abuse. So you can imagine I kind of came out of my young age with all kinds of depression and anxiety and PTSD. And being a white guy from Texas, we don't have mental health problems. That's just not acceptable. And I never tried to seek any services for them. I went into working in my first career, which was health and welfare benefits consulting. And during that time, I was introduced to methamphetamine. And not having ever received an ADHD diagnosis, I didn't realize what I mean, this feeling was like, oh, wow, I feel normal. which in some cases, I suppose was right. But what followed were years of addiction and homelessness. And I was a homeless IV drug user on the streets of Seattle for a little over 5 years. I did finally get sober in October of 2005 and was able to go into drug diversion court, which was really helpful for me. So the first thing I had to do during that time was to find meetings. And so this is when I found my organization, Peer Washington, which was under a different name at the time. And it's where I began to first experience peer support in the way that I understand it, as opposed to say like a 12-step or a non-sharing kind of meeting. And it was really transformative for me. For many reasons. I was dealing with so much mental health issues. I could barely get out of my house, oftentimes too afraid to leave as a shut-in, and needed to be able to get places and be able to process what I was going through. And I will tell you, in those early days for me, like as many of us experience, I had a therapist and I had a substance use counselor and I had a prescriber and a doctor, and they were only interested in talking to me about the pieces that they were a specialist in. I remember one time telling my therapist that I wanted to relapse so bad, and she says, "That's not what I'm here to talk to you about." And all I could think to myself is, "What are you talking about? That completely impacts my mental health. It should exactly be what we talk about." But that's sort of the world we live in. But it was only when I would go and be in community with my peers that I was treated as a person in the here and now. How are you? Holistic. Right? I could be a whole person. I felt like a whole person. And I think that was really intricate to my early recovery days. I started my first peer support group in drug diversion court called Positive Thought. And I started that group because I didn't have any positive thoughts. And I think it's pretty common for most of us who live in the streets to be in that position. And I needed that to change if I wanted my life to change. And I know enough about myself to know that if I am leading something, that I will push myself to the nth degree to make sure I do the best. And that's what I needed to do for me. So I put myself in that position and began that group. What was interesting about that group is a lot of the stuff that came out of it were precursors for what we would later use in our coaching program. But it included things like, choosing something that you do during the week to work on, sort of your positive attitude and come back and report on it. And so that was really good for me. Became a member in 2005. In 2008, I became a volunteer. And in 2009, I decided to return to work after 8 years of being on disability. And I came to work for this organization. Back then, I was the only employee. So we've been around for 40 years this year, which is amazing. But we started off as Seattle AIDS Support Group, providing peer support to people during the burgeoning AIDS epidemic. That's all you get was peer support. People were firebombing and firing you and disowning you and breaking the plates and this sort of thing. And it was really moving to me to read through the history and think about what it must have been like to go through that time and how frightening and what it meant to the members to have one another. I mean, it was hugely important. And as the years went on and HIV changed, we began to expand that peer support into other areas. And so first was addiction and then later on mental health, because these were impacting our community really the most. And at that time, we were an LGBTQ only service provider. So I came on and just was, completely impassioned by this. We did one thing at that time, and that was support groups. And, I started off as a volunteer coordinator, and the executive director was a volunteer. But I would come to find out within, say, a year and a half or so that the board and he were doing illegal things with the organization, and they had put me in as interim executive director and pulled him out. And when they did that, I began to look through and discover what they were doing. Well, I have business experience and street experience, so it was really, they were running sort of an illegal drug operation, if you can imagine that. And so I reported it and did a lot of work with community to get them pushed out, and spent quite a number of years battling that to save my organization. For me, I don't know where my life would have been without it. And at the time, I felt terrorized that somebody was doing this to something that was so important to me, and I knew that so many other people needed. It was also very aggravating to me to think about how I had really succumbed my whole life long to the stigmas of mental health and addiction, and allowed those to become so pervasive in my self-thought. And I wanted others to be able to see the value that they have. You know, when I meet somebody on the street, I meet a survivor. Somebody comes in the door, that's an amazing person to me because I know that they've been through some stuff. We haven't even talked about it yet, but man, they're here and they've made it. And I know what it takes to make it. And this is stuff that we don't hear from anybody, but we need to tell each other. And it was just extremely important for me. Trying to not go too long, Dan. So anyway, over the years after I was able to get that sort of cleared up, I've been doing lots of work within Washington State to move peer work up into the forefront, and it's been a lot of work. During that time, I've helped to start a number of organizations like the Washington Recovery Alliance, which actually started our first advocacy day, and several other peer-specific organizations. And then that process also was growing what we were doing. So there came a time when, as an LGBTQ site, we were having people come in and they were lying about their sexuality, which wasn't necessary. We don't refuse services to anybody, but it was very interesting because it was a bit of a shift in the world, right? And while they could come in and feel safe and then walk out and still be safe, those who were not safe everywhere because they don't present in a way that isn't immediately stigmatized didn't feel that way. And we took some time, me and the board, to step back and say, what do we want to do? You know, do we try to create a space that keeps it safe, or do we take this amazing model that we have and do we expand it to other communities while maintaining a safe space for LGBTQ across the board? Because we do intersect with every other population. So that was the decision that we made. And so when we did that, and you'll see over here all these, I was going to say all the little logos I'll go up there and talk about. Peer Seattle was the original. And so it now operates under a charter to serve the LGBTQ of King County, which is what it's always served. And we first opened Spokane. We went over to the east side of the state, second largest city, and we just opened one up for the community of Spokane. Each of these sites has a charter for who they're going to serve. Each of these sites has a community advisory board of people that it serves that works with the site director. And they have at least one member voted onto the board because we don't want to make decisions at the statewide level without having input on the way that it impacts people. The reason that we have different names and different colors is these are different communities, right? I can't rightly feel like I should call it the same thing when they need to be able to decide what they need. At the end of the day, it's not up to anyone else but that community to decide. And so a lot of these pieces that we put in place were to make sure that the needs that they were having were being met and that they were being considered in the decisions that we made. We would later open Peer Kent, which we put on a challenge for them to build services for families and for justice-involved individuals. And during that time, we have built peers in courts throughout municipal courts. They just work within the court system because so often we're in those courts because of secondary issues related to our mental health or addiction, trespassing, theft, that sort of stuff. And this is a little bit less of a confrontational way to engage with folks. We also began peers in libraries out of there. And this has been absolutely amazing because this is where we go and hang out when we don't have anywhere else to go. And it's a non-confrontational way for us to engage, to make a connection, and then just start help folks with services. Our services are all free. We never charge. We don't care what you make or who you are. They're free. And we'll help you as long as you need it. It's a community. And we see it as each side being a program, and we have multiple services. You come access what you need for you. And much of that is led by volunteers to lift folks up and to really support them in their recovery. Front desk resource and referral volunteers that man the front desk. We're open, by the way, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 365 days a year. We don't close because everybody else closes when we need support the most. And so I just couldn't have that, right? So it takes a lot of volunteers to run just that front desk. We have volunteers that do peer group facilitation. So if they're coming to me and saying, like, I'd like to have a support group around adult survivors of childhood incest, then, I want to lift them up to run that group. We want to give them the training, give them the support, and those groups need to be attended by people who identify with that only so that there's safety for conversation. But it also lifts the individual up into some leadership role. The other thing that folks can do is peer coaching, which we've been doing since 2011. And we actually do peer coaching for mental health, for addiction, and for HIV. So we actually do a full continuum of care, depending on whatever the needs are for the individual. And it takes about 200 volunteers to operate one of our sites every week, if that gives you an idea. So very heavy on volunteer work. And then we opened Peer Olympia. In Peer Olympia, we had a goal of serving folks who were veterans, active duty military, and particularly targeting folks who were dealing with housing issues, because it's unfortunately a huge issue in Olympia and all over our state. And so these are the direct service sites, or where I think of members going and creating community together. Olympia also has a charter to start bringing peer support out to rural towns and services, to people who can't get to one of our sites. And so it's set up to have hybrid meetings, and they have vans, and they go out and they do trainings and do stuff out in the community. But I want to make sure that those people who are the most isolated are not being left behind, because they just simply don't have the resources to get to us. And they've been doing great. With Peer Kent, we were able to build a peer family support program. We were able to get it piloted through a proviso and later permanently funded. So we have family supports at all of our sites too. So you may come in and you're the mother of a child who is addressing addiction. Great, we want to support you separately from your child. We want to support them both if they're both willing, and just make sure that we can help them find the resources without leaving them sort of hanging in the wind, whether there's things that they can do or just people that they want to talk to. So all of those sites, they have 5 core services. And that was a resource and referral I talked about: the peer support groups, the peer coaching, supported employment, supportive housing, which we added a couple of years ago. These are fundamental to social determinants of health. So for those that are housing insecure, or for those that were wanting to return to work. And so we wanted to make sure that we were providing that service. Like many of our services, we may have a particular grant or something that pays for a certain population, as they often do. We work that on the back, but in the front, we don't. Nobody's refused service ever. We just don't. And to me, that's very much a peer principle, right? We need to come together as community. And this is what I tell people, like in the COVID crisis, what happens in a crisis? Community comes together. And I don't know about y'all, but what we've seen here is this: the peer community that came together to really support the needs of other peers, because the professional community was vacating the job market. So anyway, after that, so this is all a part of my of our adult direct service. One other thing that we started under there was a recovery navigator program. We had an incident a couple of years ago that our Supreme Court, or state Supreme Court, threw out the law that made possession a felony. And so they had to vacate every felony charge going back to 1972 and repay all these funds. You can imagine it was kind of a big situation. And then quickly worked to put a new law back in. So it happened during session, and I was working with some legislators, and we were able to get Recovery Navigator program input and funded until they could come up with a new law and determine how they were going to address possession. And this was something that was rolled out statewide, and it's completely peer-based. Many of the state here have tried to build it into something else, but it's not. It's peer-based. And we handle the majority of King County, for example, and we work with law enforcement. So in this case, if law enforcement detains someone and they are having mental health issues or addiction, or there's not a crime going on, we want to send them on their way. So they give us a call, we show up, they go do their work, and we simply say, would you like help? We're happy to help you with housing and food and whatever you like, for as long as you like, or not. It's up to you. And having that type of approach, of course, is very helpful, right? Nobody likes to be told what to do. And we've had a lot of being able to bring people in, and they get met by an outreach navigator, and then we can eventually put them with a long-term recovery navigator who can help them with the different pieces of their life that they need to work on, whatever that may be. So that's probably been one of my most exciting things. They would later come back and they made it a gross misdemeanor instead of a felony, but we were kind of hoping to move away from the criminalization of this, but it's a long-term fight. So be that as it may. But as a result, what we're finding is that the police love working with us, right? Because we make their lives so much easier, and they're not using a lot of alternative services or punishments that we've seen in the past, because it's just easier for them to call us, and we can go down there, and have been building some great relationships with them. Um, all of that consists of one division. Now we have a second division, which I brought in 2019, called Peer Workforce Development. And this had previously been Peer Workforce Alliance through the University of Washington, Washington State University. It was under their nursing department, but I think it was sort of, nobody really knew what to do with it. But they came to us and said, we'd like to hand this over to you and let it live with a peer organization, which we were grateful for. And their work has always been to develop curriculum and do training specific to peer workers, or to workers around addressing mental health, whether it's like mental health first aid, that sort of thing, and have written a great number of different trainings, including the current credentialing for our certified peer counselors. And right now we're writing the curriculum for the new state licensure. So I'll talk about that really quick. We worked over a couple of years because, to me, I had a couple of issues with peers being sort of secondhand. They had it's called an AAC. It's essentially, their certificate counts as long as they're working for a mental health agency. The problem with that is that when they leave, they don't have that value anymore. And if they were to have been let go for something bad, that information doesn't travel. Where's the safety for the individual? There isn't one, really. And during COVID, I saw a lot of really nasty things from folks charging as much as $500 an hour to provide peer support. And we're talking about somebody that I wouldn't let volunteer my org. And so what we were able to do is we were able to pass Senate Bill 5555 and create licensure under Title 18. So what that means is that we're developing a curriculum right now that'll be 80 hours that people will go through, and then they will get their licensure for 2 years. We had some funding come in to pay for all of the licensure costs, to just move all the peers over so that we wouldn't have to deal with that cost share with a small number of people. And we have added in continuing education, we've added in supervision, but most of all, you can work as a peer and you're responsible for your behavior, right? So if anything, poor goes on, a complaint could be made to the Department of Health. And so we can make sure that there aren't people that are being subjected to work that they should, because peers can also work on their own. If I wanted to hang a hat and say I do peer counseling, then I can do that. And so this is opening up a lot of opportunities for folks and peers to work in many other settings. A number of the things that we have built in peer workforce development have been trainings for the active duty military, which we delivered to the Pentagon, which has worked out really great. And it's about supporting them during the stresses of being in the military. Same with veterans work. We also have been developing first responder supports. So peer supports for police officers, for EMTs, for firefighters, and for corrections officers, while also providing peer support within the corrections facilities. And what we've seen has been really amazing. And so in Washington State, corrections officers have an average lifespan of 59. When you think about that environment, it's a bad environment, right? And we have found that when we go in there and we've done this training, we're beginning to hear the amazing thing as compliments coming from guests to the officers and vice versa. It's lowering a lot of the tension, and it's giving these folks a way to process through their trauma in work. A lot of what I heard from the police departments that we worked for, they do frame it a little bit, they don't necessarily see themselves as being a peer or behavioral health, but they'll say things, well, now I don't take to the drink when I have, these issues come up, which I think is pretty amazing. Firefighters have been doing peer support for one another, we've been building, but they've also been adding peers to their response teams. And so have some of the police too. And so that when they go out to a call, that somebody can work with the family of the individual who's not going to be this frightening person in a uniform that doesn't know, necessarily what they're going through. And then we also developed an apprenticeship program in the state for peers. So it's a 1-year paid gig. And what happens is that if an organization wants to take this peer on, we give them, or it's not we don't actually don't do it, it's a different company, but they get a certain amount of money to manage admin, and all of the time that they are in training, that pay is reimbursed to the provider, so it doesn't cost them anything. And then instead of getting what's currently a 40-hour training, they get a 250 college credit training that we built with virtual reality. And I don't know about any other state, but it's the first time we've had any college credit for peer work in Washington. And it pays, like it's paying people to work, which is really amazing and fun to work on. And then I think that my last division is the Office of Behavioral Health Advocacy, which you probably know better as mental health ombuds. And in Washington State, we passed a law to combine mental health and substance use. And we were able to, this used to be in 10 different offices, which never shared information. We were able to get it pulled together under a bill to be one statewide office. And so we also run that division. All of those employees are also people with lived experience. And so we represent every single Washingtonian with regards to behavioral health issues, whether inpatient, outpatient, or insurance. And they know that when they call, they're going to be talking to somebody who actually really understands what they're going through. So there's kind of a lot there about, oh, wait, and one more thing that we started, this is starting under Peer Workforce Development, is the Washington Peer Network, and that's the one of the bottom right. And this is a support network for working peers. So within that site, we have the ability to come on and have support groups, to have coaching, to have training. We have included a new specific peer job listing. Think about Indeed, but just for peers, where peers can post their stuff and anybody hiring peers can post job opportunities. We want to make sure that we're doing some employment connection and support for those folks. And this has been really amazing for folks, especially those peers that work in small towns where maybe they're the only one, and they're oftentimes being sort of pushed to be a gopher chauffeur or a mini counselor, which we should be neither, right? We have a very important role. So that's been great. The other thing I'll share about with myself, sorry, I'm kind of losing my thought. I get the luxury of doing peer support internationally. I started a consulting business a couple of years ago because I just couldn't find enough fun peer stuff to do, I guess. And as a result, I've had this opportunity to go around the country and around the world and do build programs and do trainings, and including in 2018 and 2019, I was able to go to Ukraine. And this was, when the war had just sort of begun in Crimea. Well, I know it had. And work with them to build something. And it was such an amazing experience to go to a country and need to learn about, what are their norms? Who are they? Like, what do you call things, and what does it mean to you? And how does your system work? And how do you support one another? And how do you understand culture within that context? And so I spent quite a bit of time there working with folks. And this was under a CFAR funding. So it was addiction and it was HIV support, but it was countrywide. And it was just, to me, like everywhere I go and I meet peers that are amazing. And it's just like really anywhere, because that's not a place I think I ever would have gone. Been able to do it and work in other parts of the world as well, but I really think that was the most interesting one. So for me, I'm passionate about this stuff, like I don't know where I would be today without having folks like me to talk to. I don't know where I would be today if I thought I was the only one. I oftentimes think of peers as being, I picture an apartment building with a whole bunch of studios and a whole bunch of people sitting in every little window by themselves, because that's what we do, right? And none of that is helping our mental health, right? We need to be in community. And until something changes, until we're loud about it, until, somebody like me who has a lot of privilege and can go around, and I have no problems talking about my history of abuse and mental health and addiction. I don't care about that, because it's freeing to me. More than anything, I know somebody somewhere needs to hear it. And there was a time that I needed to hear it. And I want to make sure that, for my own health and well-being, that I stay involved in a community that keeps me accountable. And that I continue to do, just like I did when I started that group back in Drug Diversion Court, that I'm continuing to think, very deeply about what peer support means, how we can use it, where we can use it, how do we get it funded, how do we get people to better understand it. Peer is the most difficult word to explain to people for some reason, but Yet we have these statements like, until you walked a mile in my shoes. So, peer support's been here forever. We just nobody's ever really thought about it in the terms of the way that we apply it, more specifically in mental health or behavioral health in Washington. So
All
that
right.
is, there you go. Am I right time?
Yes, perfect, perfect. Now, do you prefer Joshua or Josh?
Either one's fine.
All right. My best friend in grade school was Josh Feinberg, so I'll call you Josh. Josh, I think I can speak for at least myself. Your voice is so soothing and wonderful. I really got carried away with your stories, and and it's so well spoken. I would imagine you've done this a lot, and I'm just so happy to have someone of this caliber. Are you the CEO of Peer Washington?
I am the CEO and president of Peer Washington. And today
All
we employ
right.
about 160 people and have 20 offices across the state. And it used to just be me. So I think that tells you what peers can do when you clear the way for them.
And you started about, would you say about 30 years ago?
The org started 40 years ago, and
But
I
you
began
started
2009. So it'll
to,
be
oh,
15
okay.
years this year.
So from 15 years, you've what what role would you say you played in the growth, of all the the Peer Kent, Peer Olympia, Peer, at what point did they say this guy has got so much talent, we want him to be our CEO?
Well, so they put me in. I was put in when they wanted to remove the volunteer executive director, but I was put there because I was considered to be an admitted drug user. And because they were breaking the law, they felt it would be an obvious point to me if they got caught. That's how I got put there.
Oh, so you transformed an ugly situation into a much more positive situation. You got rid of the bad people.
And it was a whole other story, but it took about 6 months for me to clear that board out and get somebody new in and report them to the IRS, and all this other stuff that I had to do, and another 6 years of legal battle before I could clear our name. And so, you know, I could. It's probably not that makes the most sense. It would have been better to start something new, but how could I do that? It meant so much to me. That's just what I did. And in the early days, I did everything. Like we even had a tree lot fundraiser, which was really a really good one. But being the only employee, and we're open back then. We weren't open every day, but we were open 12 hours a day for 4 weeks doing this tree lot sale. So I'd come in the morning at like 4 and do my work, and then I'd start the tree lot, and I'd work all those volunteers and all through the day into the evening, and then I would quit. The
Now,
tree
Josh,
lot and do work.
I have a lot of questions for you, but it's not about me, Josh. It's about everybody else here. And I hope everyone heard the stories and wants to engage Josh. So let's start with Robert, who's had his hand patiently raised for a while. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, hi Josh, how you doing? So my first question for you is, in listening to your story, I'm thinking about the police department out there versus the police department in New York City, and some of the mental health crisis calls that they go on. Some make the news, some don't. I'm wondering if peer work would work as well with the New York City Police Department as it does out there. Um, do you have a lot of violent crime out there involving people with mental health concerns?
We have a lot of violent crime. Some of them have to do with mental health concerns. We have a number of huge issues around that. They probably don't have time to go into. Do I think they could benefit from it? Absolutely. It requires, this is the hard part. It requires to come together with the police, and they're not necessarily like, they don't necessarily think like that sounds like a good idea. You sort of like talk about it and let them experience it. Um, because they're used to doing things the way that they're used to doing things. It's when they begin to see the impact that we have when we sit down with a person in crisis and can de-escalate them. I have a peer working in the courts who was in the courtroom one day when a defendant got up and flew towards the judge to attack him, and that peer stopped him and calmed him down so that the officers could walk him away. I mean, we just don't see this coming from anybody else,
We have
right?
a peer
And
corps
so
in New York City also in the courts. In New York City, with the police department, they have licensed clinical social workers that sometimes respond to mental health emergencies. I'm wondering if peers could possibly do the same thing at a lower scale with certain situations. There are certain, I used to work for 988. And I got a few real crisis emergency calls and transfer over to 911. In some cases, they could be handled by peers. In other cases, even licensed mental health people weren't able to do it. But okay, thank you. The rest of your story is extremely engaging, very fascinating. I'm wondering if some of the rules and the laws that were enacted out there could be brought over nationwide or brought over to New York.
Well, I hope I can connect Josh to the folks here in New York City who are doing like this type of work, like the CCIT group that are they don't want police involved at all in crisis response. They want EMTs, social workers, and peers. Okay, let's go to Refried Bean.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Josh, for that awesome talk. I have two questions. The first one is, do you ever do work with harm reduction? And if so, how do you prevent, that bad stuff that you already went through? I don't mean with addiction, but I mean with the leadership that was like doing crimes and stuff. I was just wondering how you work through that. And that's my first question.
So, well, working through the leadership, that's probably a different story altogether. Harm reduction is what we're known for. I hate the term harm reduction anyway, because first of all, too many things get piled into it. What I see as harm reduction, or what we see, is I don't define what recovery is for you. You do, right? The first time I do it, we're not peer anymore. So if you come to me and you say, hey, Josh, like I'm shooting up 8 times a day and I just want to shoot up 4 times a day. Okay, that's a goal. You get to 4 times a day, you consider yourself in recovery. Great, you're in recovery. It opens the door to people to come and talk to us. We don't count days. We don't do shame. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't push you or tell you or me, right? Because when we have a fall, be it with addiction or mental health, something's occurred here, and we need to feel safe coming back and talking to that community that made us safe to begin with. And too many other available supports out there do shame-based sort of trying to keep you in line. And so that's not helpful. So I wanted to remove all of that so that people just would get up and talk about it, because there's something to talk about. What we find is that people come in who would never have been able to receive services anywhere else because nobody would accept them unless they were completely abstinent, for example. And as we have worked with them to secure housing and food and other things, they continue to adjust how they define their recovery 2 times a day. And stop shooting up altogether, or maybe they smoke pot and they drink, but they're quitting meth kind of thing. And they literally don't have a problem with that. Now, it's hard for us to understand that because that stigma tells us that once you're an addict, right, you're like, you can't buy scratch tickets, right? Or if you have mental health, you're broken forever. This is not true. And we know this is not true. And so if I walk side by side with you and that's not true for you, then it's going to surface quickly. And now we can talk about it and it be addressed. So harm reduction to me is absolutely imperative. I mean, and it shouldn't be called harm reduction. It should be like, let people be who they are. We can discover for ourselves what works for us if we don't have a bunch of people pushing us around and telling us stuff. You know what I mean? We're not fools.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've actually never heard that before about like the label harm reduction kind of presumes something. That's neat. Okay, my other question is about age, and I haven't ever talked to local peers about this, but I've just thought about it when like looking for a job and stuff. And my question is, okay, as you get older, you get more lived experience. So that could be an added bonus for an employee. So this is kind of a question about hiring and stuff. But like as someone who hires people, how do you factor in age? Do you base it on the needs of the organization, or is it like an asset, or is it a detractor? Do you prefer young workers?
No. So age makes no difference to me. Most of our workers tend to be older because by the time you're in a position to become a peer, that you've reached whatever pinnacle and have moved towards becoming healthier, we're at least in our mid-30s or later. So, it's most of my staff are older, but we do run the gamut. In terms of support, right? within our direct service sites, it's the community supporting one another. So there's where the age match will happen if they want a youth group or an older group. These are my peer support specialists who are working to administer these programs and make sure that these folks have the tools and resources they need to do and get that support that they need from one another to maintain that safety. And so I don't necessarily have folks that are doing that direct work. There is some of that happening in the libraries and stuff, but we never had any issues around the age. I think once they start having a conversation and realize that, you know, we've had a lot of the same experiences, it has not been an issue for us, which I'm grateful for. Personally, I think, well, in general, I think it's terrible that folks, when they get older, have more issues finding employment. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, those are the more seasoned and experienced individuals. And I just celebrated 19 years of recovery, but during my time, I lost my spouse to behavioral health in 2021. And so it's not like we stop having experiences just because we go into this work. We live life, and life does this to us, right? So as much as it holds me accountable and makes and supports me, I continue to grow, not only in my own experiences, but in the experiences I have in supporting other folks. And so whether you come in younger or older, right, I feel like younger, you don't bring as much, but you have a lot more time to garner a lot more experience. And I just think, well, I get goosebumps. It just works beautifully for us that way. And I'm going to tell you all this stuff. So
All right. Now, I hope the rest of you guys do not have any questions or comments, because I have a lot. But let's give us 60 seconds to see who pops in. If you want to raise your hand, raise your hand. If not, just unmute yourself, and I'm counting down to 60. And if not, it's all me, you guys.
Josh, I'd like to, I'm sorry. Celia, you go ahead and I'll go after.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Sila. And I asked a question in the chat about the licensure, because I'm a recent graduate from Purdue with my bachelor's in psychology science.
wow.
And you know, to pay for the licensure such as the LMSW and those other ones, they are really costly. And especially when you're trying to put yourself out there. And yeah, as a peer support specialist, I was wondering, I'm glad you said what you said about the licensing. Would that equate to something such as the LMSW? Because basically, unless you have a license to match your degree, you know, you pretty much just got a high school diploma, so to speak.
Yeah, so this was tricky because a lot of people do peer support as volunteer work, right? And some people do peer support under grants and stuff. And so we didn't want to eliminate the ability to do that type of volunteer work. To bill Medicaid and private insurance in this state, you have to be trained in the curriculum that we're developing. You have to be licensed as a certified peer specialist, and operating under that title. So you can operate under any other title, you can't bill, but you no longer held to that. So there was the way that we sort of allowed those two to happen. And then you probably understand how, you know, licensure fees are essentially how many complaints are coming in around that particular group of folks, how many staff does the Department of Health need to manage those complaints, what does that cost divided by the number of people seeking licensure, and that's how you come up with that cost. And so that we received a little over $500,000 from the Balmer Group to dump into that tank and offset everybody's initial cost, so that we could get a bunch of people, you know, licensed without having to pay some ridiculous amount of money. That's how we went through that process.
Can I ask you a question? How much do you
Robert, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt here. We're going to Stan now, but you can, if no one has a question after Stan, we got you. Okay, Robert? Go ahead, Stan.
It's all right, I'll put in chat.
So, Joshua, first of all, I'm just blown away, amazed by the work that you've been able to accomplish and how you've been able to grow this thing. I'm in Winnipeg in the middle of Canada, and in a city of 800,000 people. And for the last 20 years, I've been kind of doing peer work on my own, actually without any funding. And to this day, all we have is a weekly meeting and peer support. Typically, we meet each other sometimes for coffee or something and work with each other, but we've never grown. You've done this amazing thing. You found this amazing staff, which is one of the issues that I've found here. You know, when I was 3 months sober, I was all ready to go out and save the world. I wanted nothing more than to tell everybody how to get sober, how to get, and I run into a lot of people like that, and they're just not ready for peer support. And my experience here, because we started a program, somebody has started a program that trains peers, but they give them 5 weeks of fairly intensive training, and then they put them to work, and they just don't have that practice, of being with people and that flexibility. So you found this amazing staff, and I'm curious how you find those people. And I'm also curious how your work, your organization gets funded, because there's a big issue, and I struggle with the systems. I'm an old hippie, and I don't trust the man. So, um, so I wonder, like, what's your formula there?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Most of our folks have been built up through membership, right? Just like it was for me, as I became a member and then a volunteer and employee. That's a very common story, including my number two. So most are that way. The other thing is you can't come to work for us, aside from a few jobs, you can't come to work for us if you don't have lived experience, which is tricky because, if a disability is protected, then the opposite of the disability is also protected. And so it's a little, because the way the laws are, but that's what we require. How can you be here if you don't relate to people? And then the other piece of it is that, like, the training to me, the culture, and the way that I believe that a peer-run company needs to be run. First of all, the typical corporate setting is awful to everyone. But if I'm asking people, and this irritates me across the behavioral health continuum, if I'm asking somebody to put themselves in the way of secondary trauma, then it's my responsibility to make sure you have the resources to address it. I think it's really irresponsible that we tell folks to go work their twice the caseload they should have and go take care of their own problems on their own time while they're supposed to be dealing with their family. So I give lots of benefits to my staff, and make sure that they're taken care of, and make sure that, we are being cognizant not only of the fact that we are each peers and we bring certain things to the table, but that we're also responsible for what we bring to the table, because being a peer cannot be a reason to cause issues among your work staff. And so the majority of the folks that work for me love their job. Can't believe I work here. And that's what I want. I want them to get up every day and want to go to work, not because it's easy, but because it's fulfilling. And so I think I've done a really good job of that. So lots of supports there. And then, what was the other question you asked me? I'm sorry.
Oh, it was about how you get who funds your operation.
Yeah. So to show your growth, we were at 84,000 was our budget when I started. Last year we did 12.6 million. This year will be around 15. And the majority of my funding is either federal direct, indirect, or state direct, indirect, or county. That's probably 95, 96%. And I will say that when COVID hit, we were around 2 million a year. And we closed our doors, and I continued to pay all my staff and worked with my funders to do that until we could open back up again. But what I saw is an opportunity for all of the conversations and arguments I have with people who want to say foolish things about people with lived experience. What I could say now was, everybody's being impacted. We have professionals running away from the system, but the peers are running to it, right? And you have to stop denying that we are able to come in, especially in crisis situations. We have a lot of crisis response with peers, and be able to de-escalate, especially if you don't have anybody to send out there. We had folks who were locked in their house having mental health episodes, and their families couldn't get in, and they couldn't dispatch anybody to go see them because nobody was available or could go. And if I were to have sent someone out, I could potentially, be liable or harm my company because there's no provision for that at the time, right? And so I'm a very passionate person. And I just go and I speak a lot of my truth to folks. And I do what I got to do. You know, we're survivors and it's worked well for me. And that means when I work with a politician, I try to find those who have some type of shared experience or family experience. And if I can't find any of that, I'm going to find out what's important to them at Tight. And if I can't find any of that, I'll show up to their town halls and ask pointedly uncomfortable questions, not to embarrass them, not to create enemies, but when they're in front of their constituency, it changes their tune. And we've been able to roll it. There was no funding coming to outside of Medicaid reimbursed mental health peer services. There was nothing else going out in the state prior to that time. So to me, that's what it takes. It takes, you know, it takes that passion and that push. And like, I don't say no. I want, when I walk down the hall in Olympia, I want them to either be happy to see me or afraid because they did something to harm peers and I'm trying to talk to them, right? And it sounds awful, but at the same time, we've been evicted too long, right? And too many of us don't feel like we can speak and are told we can't speak. I can speak, right? And if that's what I bring to the table, then I bring the stories and I bring the people with their stories. That's what I have to do. That's what I have to do for me. And being able to do that for others, I think just gives my life a lot of meaning.
You're amazing, amazing man. I think just what you've accomplished there really blows me away. Maybe I could be like you when I grow up.
Well, I don't want to grow up, so.
Neither do I.
Yeah, growth from 85,000 to 15 million is within a span of what, how many decades? Like
15,
2011 to 2024. So that's what, 13 years?
13 years. That's amazing.
Now, can I sneak a quick question in? Very quick.
No, not quite, Robert.
One quick question.
I'm sorry, Robert. I'm so sorry. We will get to you, I promise, okay? So Josh, let's talk about control. You're the CEO. You have, is Josh still there? Hold on, let me see.
Yeah.
Oh, no, oh, there you are. Okay. So Josh, control. When it was $85,000, easier to control, right? And then like how did you go through a personal journey of letting go of some of that control, and what are some aspects of the business that you will not let go of control?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, here's the thing. When I started off and it was small and I didn't know what I was doing and I was teaching myself and learning, and because of the issues that I had been left with, that legacy of action, I had to learn a lot of things. Like, for example, I had to learn how to do our 990s because nobody would do that work, right? And so I'm glad, because it really forced me to get in and learn a whole lot about nonprofit and about law, tax law, all kinds of stuff. And I think that was beneficial for me. And as a smaller organization, you can be very nimble, right? It's like, oh, you want that done? We could do it today, which doesn't happen when you get larger, unfortunately. And so it's handy to be that way. The downside is you don't have the resources, and people don't necessarily see you as somebody they want to be a part of or assist or whatever. I dealt with a lot of stigma in that regard too, even from my contemporaries for quite a while. As I've grown larger, there were things that I've said I will never go. One of them was finance. I love numbers, right? But I did eventually grow too big and had to hire a CFO. And to this day, she that handles the finances, and I no longer have the 100% knowledge of it because it's so huge. And I'm sad about that, but it's not really my job to do that. My job is to be in the leadership position. So trusting folks to step in and picking those folks who can carry us forward has been the most important, and particularly folks in recovery, right? Because I want them to understand how their work plays out in the lives of the members that we're serving. At the end of the day, it's that mission statement that I need to achieve, and it's those members that I need to serve. And so every decision I make, from how a process goes to a policy to who I hire, those things all fall into place. As a larger company, and we can't be as nimble, it takes a long time to do things, and we're a bigger target, right? So, more likely for people to want to try and sue us or that type of thing. And so can't be quite as nimble or creative as you can as a smaller org. And as a larger org, you know, we do the mandatory simple audit, which is anything but simple. So it's just, there's a lot to sort of hold in there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so my question is, when you're a certified peer specialist through the Academy of Peer Services, is that a national certification?
No, it's state.
That's by the state.
Correct.
So if I'm in New York State, so if I were to have to go out there, you have to take the certification process out there. How is it different from the academy state by state, do you know?
I don't know, aside from the fact that Washington only recognizes their own. So what they had before, peers didn't really exist. The significance of this, and they wouldn't have recognized nationally anyway. The significance of this is that under Title 18, it's legitimately a profession now, where it never was before.
Is
So
Title
the
18
outsiders
federal?
Huh?
Is Title 18 a federal statute or state?
Well, it's state. Title 18, that's where, well, at least in our state, that's where we put all the profession listings that are managed, particularly by the Department of Health.
So because for lobbying purposes, we'd have to, the leadership of the New York State community would have to figure out what title it is, all the professional services, so they can make peers more of a profession.
Yeah. And in the law that we passed, it was compelling private insurance to pay for it as well. So the peer services weren't solely limited to folks who are on Medicaid. You know, not everybody who needs peer services is on Medicaid. So why deny those services? And if we can provide you free peer services within the community-based setting, and you go and you see somebody with a peer service that works as a team, that's great. But if that's your only person, right, you don't want to leave even if you're not getting the best of service, where we can support you and move you over. So to me, we need to have peers on both sides, and they address different things, right?
Thank you.
Robert also asked an interesting question in the chat, and that was, I mean, are the peer specialists in your organization earning a livable wage? Is that the right expression? A livable wage?
You know, almost all my contracts state I have to pay a livable wage, but in my opinion, rarely do they give enough money to pay a livable wage. But we're in Seattle, right? So, well, in Seattle, well, we're all over the state, right? But in Seattle, for example, 70,000 is what is stated to be the minimum livable wage, which they don't give me enough money to do. But we do. All of our folks start at it's just under $18 an hour. That's the low end. And what we provide for them is fully paid medical, dental, vision, short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, AD&D. We give them a $100 monthly travel stipend to get themselves to and from work. We pay all of their state rates for unemployment and PFML. We just reimburse them in their check. I want to take away all of that from them. So there's always been this conversation of, well, we could pay you a bit more and take your services away. But the most expensive one is the medical, dental, and vision. And I don't know about you, but I can't be somewhere if I don't have my insurance coverage. I take a ton of medication and I need to see my care providers, right? And so this is that part where I talk about it's my responsibility to take care of you. I'm asking you to do this work and you're doing it. I'm so grateful. I'm supposed to, you know, I feel like I need to pay for that and make sure that you have it. That support is important.
All right, let's hear from some folks who haven't spoken yet, and I will see if Ashley C is there. Ashley C, are you there?
Hi,
Ash.
thanks for allowing me to speak. Very grateful for the opportunity to hear from someone who's actively doing this work, and getting more insight about that. I've been very curious about the ins and outs about participating and potentially getting a certification myself. And I guess like with the way you shared your story, I can see the value of the influence that you've built across the past, I think you said 13 years that you've developed this program. So I appreciate y'all for like actually hosting this event to share that insight. I definitely feel like I'm absolutely, well, I was on that fence before, but absolutely interested in exploring getting a certification myself.
What state are you in, Ashley?
I'm based in New York, currently in Texas for work.
Oh, you're in Texas right now?
Yes.
Okay. Are you ever coming back to New York City?
Oh, yeah, that is indeed the plan.
All
Is
right.
that where you stand?
Pardon me? That's where we're based. Yeah. So please get in touch because we have so much going on and we'd like to get you involved. And it would be fun. It's not work. Okay.
Okay. Sounds like the plan.
Do you have any questions for Josh or anything like that?
Sure. So I was curious, what, like, were there any like setbacks in trying to get folks to allow themselves to be helped? Or do you have like any insight on like more difficult scenarios with engaging with people just generally?
Well, the perspective we take is it's not my decision, it's yours, right? All I can do is say, this is who I am, make a connection, and this service is available. If you want it, it's free, it's yours. That type of approach is helpful in a lot of ways. Usually it will kind of de-escalate somebody if they feel like you're coming at them to do whatever. And if they're not ready, that's okay, because you plant a seed. I always wanted peer workers to be in safe use sites, which we've never been able to start, or just any of these places, or needle exchange. Because if you see me and you talk to me, you may not be ready today. I might plant a little seed the next time you come. And as long as I'm not poking and pushing you, those are the folks that take a little while to come in, but never in a way that's difficult, right? The minute that I start saying something to someone that makes them feel like they're being attacked or whatever, I'm not doing good peer work, right? It's not my job to do that or to tell them anything about their life. It's only my job to listen, right? To make sure that I understand and to use motivational interviewing to draw out those things that they want to do that maybe they're feeling benevolent about, right? So that we can get them to do some change action. And that can start from just as simple as, when they walk in the door and I just say, I think you're the most amazing person I've ever met. I've been where you've been. You're a hero to me. How can I help you? I've done that a lot of times that people just start crying, and I get it because nobody says that to you on the street. Nothing like it.
James, you've been unusually quiet, Chaplain James. Would you like to chime in here? This is a very interesting conversation. Let me ask you to unmute, James. Let's click that little button. If you've been there, I don't know. I only see your beautiful picture. All right, James is stepped away to have a sandwich. So, Ella, are you there, Ella? Hello, Ella. All right, we're having no luck with Ella or James. That's too bad because, oh, well, we got Pate too. Pate,
Yes, hi.
have you been
I was
with
gonna I was gonna ask you, Joshua, which state you were from, and then you answered my question. That you're in Washington State. I am in Texas, like Ashley, and I have a nephew in Washington State who is an engineer working for Jeff Bezos, and I have a niece in Oregon who is working as either a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant.
Nice.
Anyway, I've got some
I'm
family up there.
I'm from Lubbock, Texas. That's where I
How
was
are
born.
you?
Yeah.
Okay, Lubbock, Texas. They're well known for their mental health system up there in Lubbock. I
Yeah,
think
that and
I've
Buddy
always
Holly.
thought, huh?
That and Buddy Holly. Very proud, Buddy Holly.
now, Pate, you were with us during the whole conversation, right?
No, I came in about 15 or 20 minutes late.
That's okay. I think you got most of it. Um, what are your thoughts and feelings about Josh's journeys and challenges?
Well, I noticed that, he mentioned that he liked numbers, and that's what I'm attempting to do is become a bookkeeper. Right now, I'm taking a computerized accounting course, but I've taken a lot of bookkeeping courses that are sort of necessary before you take your computerized accounting course, like adjusting entries, correction of accounting errors, stuff like that. But I'm hoping by the end of this semester, well, what I'm planning on doing at the end of this semester is seeing if I can do tax preparation work for one of the tax companies in town. And
All
then
right.
after I'm through doing my tax preparation work, I want to see if I can get a job doing bookkeeping, maybe for a small business at first or something like that.
All right, Pei. Well, we know you can do it. We have faith in you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Now, if
Yeah,
Ella, oh, who's talking?
me,
Oh,
Josh,
go ahead.
my impression is that everyone in your organization, Sheila and everybody else, is also a peer or a person with lived experience. Is that true?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And there's many different roles, right? But using that peer, I think that's really important that they have that. Not everybody is made out to be an outreach worker or a whatever support worker, So
Well, my
um,
CFO, who's a peer through and through, and really well known in the community, she loves numbers and she likes to help the community. And so this is how she helps her community, because counting is what she does. And so
yeah,
that's how she gets her fulfillment out of it. And I think that's amazing. And that's a lot of our staff are like that, from our data lead to maintenance to IT to marketing, all of it. And they also bring that perspective into their work, because it really does make a difference in the way you think about things.
Yeah, well, I've already offered to Dan to do a little revenue and expense spreadsheet for his nonprofit. So
Thank you, Pei. We hope to be in touch soon. Now let's see. Now, if Ella or James would like to chime in, that would be great. Otherwise, let's give them Silea, you have something to say?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if the licensure training program, is there anything like that in New York? And if so, how can I get involved?
Oh, well, I don't think Josh can speak to New York, but yeah, there's the Academy of Peer Services that is involved around licensing peer specialists. It looks like Ella unmuted herself. Ella, are you there?
Yeah, I had a similar question. I guess how much do you recommend doing like peer training programs or trying to go ahead and get a job as a peer that I guess because it seems like a lot of jobs allow you to get trained once you get the job. What do you think about that?
Well, and I can only speak for Washington State. So here's my issue. We always had a long list of people waiting to get into the training. And if you had obtained a job, you would get put to the first of the line. My issue with this is that this is where we see white privilege paying left and right, right? And that, to me, that's not fair. So we weren't able to get that increased, and also to start having to put in some diversity and equity rules and how that process goes. Personally, I think you should be able to get the training and get the job, or go get the job and get the training. Why should it matter? Either way, you have to have it. What really dictates that is what does the market look like? In a for-profit market, you're going to want to reach out and get those folks and train them, but we don't get that kind of money, right? And those of us who want to be peers probably don't have a whole lot of money. And so we have been putting a lot of different resources together to help folks to bridge that little piece of it, but it's still not perfect. Not in my mind, not by a long ways. I want to see more equity in people's ability to engage in the training and to find meaningful work. And this is one of the reasons why we started the employment connection through our WPN. Does that answer your question?
Oh, go ahead, Ella. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's helpful.
You have a follow-up?
Right. I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, no, that's good. That's good. That's helpful. Thank you.
All right.
I'm struck that it's different in every state. Every state has its own organization. I believe that New York City alone probably has far more workers and people doing this work, but under a lot of different names and a lot of different structures, some of which coordinate with each other, some of which compete with each other. So I think that's one of the big things. In Canada, we have a national organization under the Canadian Mental Health Commission, which has undertaken to develop peer support as a profession. But each province also has a separate organization, a separate mental health organization. And in my own community here, everybody's competing for the same funding. And so you get this siloing thing happening, which can create conflict. But so those are just some observations. You've covered a lot of that in the way you've set up your organization. I mean, it's brilliant.
Well, I firmly believe there can't be just one peer organization, so to speak. Like, it has to be more. And so it has always been my method to share any of our programs, services, and trainings for free, to do consulting with anybody that wants to start or transition into or grow a peer organization. That's peer to me. And the reason for that is I always say to people, like, you always want to go to the good Denny's, which always cracks me up, right? Because there'll be two Denny's, and who thinks the good one is this one and this one? It depends on who you are and where you go. We can't approach everything the same way. That's the way we're already treated, like we should all fit into one box. We need to support the ability to have many different peer perspectives and approaches to doing this work so that the people that need the services can find what's right for them. Well, this kind of bothers me when they try to.
Thank you. Nicely put.
Now, Josh, I find that having a community, isolation and loneliness, the Surgeon General wrote a whole paper about it. And so it's an issue. The United Kingdom has a department of loneliness and isolation. In New York State, before she died, Dr. Ruth Westheimer was called upon by the governor of New York to be the loneliness ambassador. So anyway,
there's questions there. Okay, go.
But so like, what is Peer Washington doing to build community with activities and socialization and friendships and all this stuff?
Yeah, so I think this is important. But the things that nobody ever talks about in recovery is having fun, which is just the most mind-blowing thing to me. So not everything that we do is necessarily specific to some type of therapeutic conversation. We have game nights, and we have book groups, and we have writing groups, and we have like all kinds of stuff, artistic groups, ways for people to express themselves, ways for people to come into a place and a group that they feel safe with when they don't feel safe just about anywhere else, and be able to express themselves. I don't determine what groups we do, the community does. And I've had people come and say, like, you need a group for this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, do you want to start it? Because nobody wants to come to my lesbian group, right? So this is how we lift people up. And this is how I see the most amazing things. If you go and check out our different sites, each of my sites has its own website, like peerseattle.org. You can go and see the many different kinds of groups that those members have created, and they're amazing. And I feel like two great things happen there. One, not only are we providing what people need, but we're providing what they need right now. Because the people that are coming in off the streets and telling me they need this, that, and the other, they need it now. And we know that by the time somebody gets around to funding it down the road, right, it's already long been a problem. It's probably killed a huge minority population, right? And there's going to be some stupid funding around it that says it'll only pay for this one thing, as though we all have just one thing, right? And it negates services to others, and that bothers me a lot.
Are you familiar with the Clubhouse model?
I am.
Do you have a clubhouse under Peer Washington?
Not under Peer Washington. We do have Clubhouse Northwest here, which is run by Kaylee Fiedler-Golke. And we at one time we had 7, and a state law changed around the funding, and it closed all but 2 of them. But we have been fighting side by side with them to get funding. Now, Clubhouse is obviously a little bit different than what we do, but we go and we testify together around this stuff. And so when we got some Clubhouse specific funding passed, we also got what's called PRO funding, or peer run org. And so originally under Clubhouse, Washington had defined Clubhouse to include peer run organizations, which is not correct exactly. And so we're eventually able to move them over. So it didn't seem like we were trying to compete with one another, because we shouldn't be. We should be working together. So that's been helpful. I think being able to come from those 2 different perspectives has helped both of us to get additional funding to provide those types of services.
Well, tell us about the different perspectives. What are the differences?
Well, so clubhouses aren't necessarily peer run. And the services are typically there for feeding, for job placement support, or support. And it's very specific to mental health. And in peer run organizations, or certainly in our organization, we are peer led from the top down, right? And you can't come in and not be a peer and run things here. Yeah, I'm not going to have a non-peer trying to tell, you're not going to have that environment. And then we don't see it as a place to sit and hang out or whatever. We don't do food service and that type of thing. There are other places that do that. But when you come in the door, it's about moving forward. And sometimes moving forward is sitting in a place that's safe and having a conversation. That's moving forward. But we want to present opportunities for folks to do it. We want to lift them up to do it. We see everyone as the same. So like when you come in, you're a member, you're just like the employees that work here. We just happen to have a responsibility to manage the space that we're being paid for. And to me, that brings a different feel. Anytime you add a power difference into an equation, you change everything. And so I don't allow any type of power difference work within the org. I don't allow therapists to come in and work. We don't do referrals ever. I don't take any kind of agreement where I benefit from getting you to go somewhere, because it's not about where I want you to go. Anything like that, out the window. I want people to come in and feel safe. And I think most people realize it, but you know it when you're in a place where somebody may have control over you versus when you're in a place where somebody doesn't. And one is very freeing, right? And the other one's very frightening. And one of those is very therapeutic to me, and the other one is not. And so, not to say that clubhouses necessarily are, I think they're great. But again, when I talk about those 2 Denny's, we need different approaches and different ways of serving folks. We have a lot of folks that use our services and Clubhouse and Recovery Cafe, and we all provide a different nuance, and that's how it should be, right? Get what you need, whatever it is. If it's all of it, some of it, none of it, one of it, it should be available to you. That's how I see it.
Thank you. Oh, Stan, go ahead.
I was curious about, I've been involved with peer respite housing, peer respite homes and soteria houses. We organized an international conference a few years ago, actually, but you're not including, your services don't include any peer respite homes, but are you familiar with them, and are there any in your area? And how do you work with those guys?
So I am familiar with it. I fought for many years to get funding passed for peer respite. The reason that I don't do it is that right at the last minute, when they were passing the law, the legislators thought to themselves, well, we should just tie this to Medicaid so it only costs us half as much. But when you tie something to Medicaid, you medicalize it, right? Because now you have to have a diagnosis. Now you have to have a professional work. And this is not a peer respite. You don't go to a peer respite to meet with a nurse, a doctor, a mental health professional. You don't do that. That's not the point. The point is to go somewhere where you're with friends in a safe place without power differential, where you can be calm and sort of feel through that experience rather than maybe being in a place where it continues to escalate until you're forced into some type of service. And so when that happened, I mean, I've been bitching about it ever since. I won't go to one. I won't run one. They aren't real peer respites. And I complained about it in a legislative session, right? We took the peer respite model and absolutely destroyed it. And this is very common here and probably most places because they don't get that nuance. But that nuance is everything. I don't want to go if I'm afraid to go to the hospital, I'm afraid I'm going to be committed. I want to go to a peer respite to sort of run through I don't want to be there with somebody who's going to put me away, right? We are starting we can't get any funding for housing, but somehow we came up with over $1 billion for these crisis response centers, places where police could just drop you off. And they were going to put a DCR, which is the title for what we call a person who can remand you for involuntary hold in every location. Why the hell would you want to go to a crisis place that has a person on staff that'll put you away? Doesn't make sense. You're not going to go, right? So you're not going to get service. And it's that kind of stuff that really gets me. So my fight continues with that. I don't consider our peer respites peer respites. There's 3 of them now, I believe. There's one in Tacoma that I met the gentleman who runs it. And I absolutely love him because he's just bucking the system, and I'll tell him, no, we're going to do it the peer way, which is exactly what I would do, to be quite frank. But to me, fundamentally, it needs to be changed because it doesn't work that way, as I'm sure you know.
All right. Well, at this point in the conversation, I would like to just check in with everyone, see how they're doing. We'll start with you, Josh. How are you feeling? And how are you feeling about the way this went today?
Feeling great. I always love talking with peers. I think it's great.
Beautiful. All right. Silea, how are you doing? Ask you to unmute. And there you go. How you doing, Silea?
I'm doing better now that, I'm conversing with my peers.
All right. All right. Ella, how are you doing?
I'm okay. This was great. Thank you.
All right, Ella. Ashley, how are you doing?
Doing well. Very much appreciate the time you took to organize this and give us all the extra insight, especially as a person who doesn't really have a community, is actively trying to figure out how to build one. This was definitely great to add to my repertoire of ideas and avenues to go to explore.
Ashley, are you seeking to build a community yourself?
Yes, I'm actually trying to build a nonprofit myself based in Long Island.
Oh.
Yes, and I feel like the center of it is healing from trauma and within community. And I feel like there is a special place for peer specialists in this idea, I guess. I guess I'm working in electoral politics right now, so I kind of got pulled into a different direction, but this is still something that I want to invest time into developing. So I will absolutely be in touch with City Voices and to pick your brain on ideas on how to make that work.
Okay, happy to do it. And Josh, do you think you'd be willing to share an email address or something? Can I share your email address? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we got Josh.
You can get it up too.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Refried Bean, how are you doing, Refried?
I'm doing good. This is very interesting, and I just I hope that I hope every state ends up with good peer services.
All right. Let's see. We got Stan. How are you feeling, Stan?
I'm just really filled with admiration for the work that you've done. I've been sitting here thinking, you got to have 3 or 4 clones running around there somewhere in the background, just the amount of work that I imagine to be involved, as well as the passion that you bring to it, but also the ability to hold it all together, this little tapestry in your mind of peer support, right? And so I'm both inspired and invigorated. And I thank you very much for being with us today.
Pate, how you doing, Pate?
I'm doing okay. We've only got one respite center in Houston. I'm not all that fond of the public mental health system anyway, but I do think we need another respite center here in Houston.
I imagine.
All right, Josh, we're back to you. Josh, tell us something, Josh. Tell us what's on your mind. Tell us what's in your deepest heart. Tell us that wisdom that is just constantly filling your heart's cup. Empty a little bit for us, Josh, please.
Oh, well, the wisdom is all within you. If I could just bring it out, you'd be good. Have y'all, okay, I'll just go random. Have y'all been to or heard of Peerpocalypse?
Yes.
Now I think the largest peer since
That's in
alternatives
Oregon, right?
Yes, and it's amazing. I go every year. I love it. So if you ever get a chance to go and you see me, come say hi. It's well, I love peer conferences anyway, and there aren't a ton of them, but it's huge and it's just so much fun.
Did you do it used to be a thing, alternatives?
Alternatives. I had been to alternatives. They finally stopped getting funding from SAMHSA and it sort of collapsed. And so they sent a bunch of their folks to Peerpocalypse. So I was sad about that because I think there was really a long vetted group of peer leaders that were involved with alternatives, and they're amazing. And so, when these things kind of pass away, and I guess that's going to happen when funding changes. Just like to see it being built up in other places. And what we don't have enough of, as far as I'm concerned, is cross collaboration in this country and across states. I can go talk about this state does this and this state does that, and somebody cares or doesn't care. But why aren't we all doing it the same? I was very excited that Joe Biden was the first president to ever mention the development of peer support in his State of the Union address, and that SAMHSA has been working towards that end, including a national certification, which at some point could render our state certification unnecessary. That's what I'm talking about. Like, where are we going to get the support for us to start working across the country? Because if we're all working in silos, and we're all doing it a little bit different. There's so much that we could be sharing with each other. There's so many successes that we could be passing on to one another. And how do we do that when we have no opportunity to talk about it?
I love that you said that, Josh. That is definitely part of my game plan, trying to hoard as much information as I can to share the wealth that I've discovered from entertaining groups all over the country as I've been exploring. So I would love to talk to you more about your thoughts about that.
Absolutely.
Josh, how many peer employees do you have?
We have about 160 on staff.
And you're at 15 million, and there's an $8 million peer-run organization, the largest one in New York. It's called Baltic Street AEH. Have you heard of it?
Huh.
That's all right. It employs about 100 peer specialists. Yeah, balticstreet.org, I believe, is their website. But yeah. They're not 100% peer run like you, though. Which is like fascinating to me. Wow. Like it's just like the karma involved in having a situation like that at this level is extraordinary. This must have been your 99,000th life.
It feels like it sometimes.
Anyway, I want to thank you, Josh, for taking the time, and I hope we can stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Your email is there, and I certainly have more questions for you. Perhaps we could do like an interview, and perhaps you can come back in a few months. Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, and so would we. Oh, yes. All right, you guys.
We're actually here every first and third Monday, every week, unless it's a holiday. And you're welcome to join us anytime. I love hearing about what you're doing and the work that you're doing. And we are all peers, basically, who are eager to learn more. And we do that from each other. It's that communication across wherever we can. So you know, you're probably a pretty busy guy, but we're here every first and third Monday. All of you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, Josh, do you think you're the largest peer-run organization in the entire country?
I don't know about that. I know I'm the largest and oldest in the state, but I'm not sure about the country.
Very interesting. And Baltic is the largest in New York State. Anyway, Josh, I'm not going to keep you. I want to thank everyone, Stan, Pate, Ashley, Refried, Bean, Silea, Ella. Thank you for coming, Ashley. I don't know if I mentioned you. Okay. I want to thank you all for this wonderful time together. And we're going to keep staying connected. And God bless you all. And I hope to see you again soon. Okay, you guys?
Wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Can I ask a question? How can I get involved with City Voices?
Silea,
Yes,
you're on our Facebook page, right?
I think, yeah, I just did it Saturday, I think. Also,
I'm putting my email in the chat, okay? Send me a quick email and I'll send you more information.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that.
Did you get it? Did you get it?
It's in the chat. Yeah, I got it. Okay, I got that.
All right, so copy that down, send me an email, and then we'll work from there, okay?
Okay, well, I think I sent it Saturday. I sent my resume. I didn't know. I sent it to the other lady. I forgot her name.
Oh, well,
Didn't
I didn't get anything, Silea.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right, then I'll send it again.
All right. Bye,
Okay.
guys.